to see, help your guys walk in Main Street. We'll get started because potentially we have a lot to talk about today. So thanks everyone for coming. I'm Jim Corbett. I'm with Energy Futures Group, one of the firms that's helping the department with this code update. And welcome to the second round of stakeholder input meetings on residential energy code update. The first look at that tonight. So today's meeting, what we're trying to do is we want to get responses and reactions to some of those post changes in the code. And I think there probably are going to be places for folks who have actually dived into the red line version where we haven't got the wording as good as it should be. And what I'm going to ask is let's try not to fix that today. But if you have comments, you see things where you think the wording could be clarified, we really want to know, but there's a way that you can send it in online or catch it afterwards. Probably be more effective use of people's time. There's also a comment form in the back.
Yeah, a copy of the same one.
There you go. Okay. So what we're going to try to do today, talk for a few minutes about purpose and background. We're going to look at briefly at some fairly important elements of the code that we have not changed. The reason to do that is let's take those off the table. We're not. If there are things again that people think are really a problem in the existing RV code, things should be changed. We want to hear that, but we're not really here to try to discuss that today. It's already been in the code for several years, and send in comments. But we are going to look at the things that are proposed for changes, and that's where we really want to get your comments and your thoughts. We're going to try to go through those changes with a modest amount of discussion and see if there are particular areas where people really want to dive in. So we're going to try to do that sort of in the first half, and if there are areas where people want to dive in, we'll get into that in more detail in the second half. And wrap up soon. So I want to introduce the team. Maybe people will raise their hands or something. So this is being done under the auspices of the Public Service Department. Kelly Lauder in the back, and Barry Murphy also in the back are leading the project. I'm Jim. A lot of people know Richard Bates here with Energy Futures Group. Tim Gitterman over here from Navigant, and Stu Sloat was trying to get back from Ohio. Why he would want to get back here from Ohio, I don't know. Something didn't work out last night, so he's on route. He hopefully will be here for the afternoon. And then these other folks are not here, Eric Mackler, Jim Edelson, and Michael Wine. They're consultants who are really involved in the details of code development nationally, who've been advising us on this process. We'd also like to know, if we could, just kind of briefly, who's in the room and what your interest in this is. So if we could go around, we'll start in front and work our way back. We'd appreciate that.
My name is Robert Jimenez. I'm an architect with Trix Collins in Burlington in the home and residential studio.
Great, thanks.
My name is Tim Garrett. I'm the chairman of the South Burlington Development Review Board. So if you're trying to understand how these codes and how I can possibly draft it into our LDRs to propose some reviews of energy efficiency before developers start building.
I'm Dave Peep. I'm with Efficiency Vermont. I basically run the Energy Code Assistance Center and field a lot of calls.
I'm Pete Gill. I'm with the Natural Resources Board and interested in how this will interface with 9F, one of the criteria.
Davenport, Northeast Energy Efficiency Partnerships.
Chris Snyder, Snyder Homes, residential home builder and developer.
I'm Kathy Beyer. I'm the Vice President for Development for Housing Vermont. We build affordable rental housing, and I would say I'm concerned about the wording of the stretch code and criterion 9F of Act 50.
Jason Webster, Huntington Homes. We're a modular manufacturer.
Bob Duncan, Wisniewski Architecture in Burlington, and I'm interested in code and making sure that my clients can afford this.
Construction and Builders Association, so I'm here both from residential renovation and also how this will affect our home.
Andrew Tatro from Homestead Design, project manager. Keep up with those.
Bill Gardner, Gardner Kill Point Architects, and be here for both sessions. We do a lot of residential and commercial.
Jonathan Collins from Arnold and Angus Architects, and pretty much the same thing.
Grower, aviation, Dave, and family and multi-family.
Dave Adams, DHFA, and again, we're interested in what changes are to be made, both impact on cost,
part of my interest is how this interacts with pre-existing housing.
Right, this is my dad.
Jeff Gephardt, Efficiency Vermont, residential construction services.
Scott Harrington from my gas systems. We actually eventually offer rebates for customers who build homes above code and all that.
Builder, CWR engineering, mechanical design engineer.
I'm Walter Adams. I'm the senior design and field engineer with Chase Construction.
And I'm Amy Dimensional to the Champlain Housing Trust.
And feel free to come and sit in the front or stand in the back, whatever you are more comfortable doing. There are a few seats down here still. And logistics folks, for people who haven't worked in this room before, the restrooms are out that door. The bathroom is more or less straight ahead and over here. Turns, the energy efficiency guy at BD asked me to let you know that if you use the electrical room as the restroom, you might bring down the grid. So he prefers that you go that way. It's his joke, okay? I was just asking it. Okay, so I'm going to zip through some background stuff. Some of you probably heard this before. Vermont law requires the energy code to be updated every 3 years. The process is managed by the Public Service Department and affects both the residential and commercial side of the code. So we're in that process now. And there's a little bit of a new twist to the update process this year, which is some of the implications of Act 89, the legislature passed a year ago. And there are some requirements for town administrators, both that they have to provide information about the energy code. So when you come in to get a zoning permit to build a house or whatever, the town administrator is now supposed to tell you, by the way, you have to make sure that you meet the energy code and provide that information, code book, or link, whatever it is. And there's also a provision for jurisdictions that require a certificate of occupancy. They're not supposed to issue that certificate of occupancy until you provide the documentation that you've met the energy code. So, again, passed by the legislature. The other thing that affects energy code for RVs is this idea of a stretch code. So what you're going to find in this code update is the base code, which is the RVs updated, but the same approach that applies to all residential new construction in Vermont. You have to meet base code. There are provisions that stretch code, there are some situations where you're going to have to meet stretch code, which is a higher bar. And those two scenarios are if a local jurisdiction decides that they want to adopt the higher bar stretch code, they can do that. But there are also implications for Act 50 meeting the energy efficiency criteria. The presumption is that Act 50 permits will require that residential new construction meets the stretch code. And the schedule, basically, we had some introductory stakeholder meetings sometime in the spring. I think it was March. Now, around where we've actually been able to go through, we were able to get the code text, we've redlined it, we've made some proposals about what we think are appropriate changes. There's a comment period that on July 9th based on this current redline version. That's going to go to the Legislative Committee on Administrative Rulemaking for their review. There will be a public hearing in September. And again, this is the proposed schedule. There'll be another comment period, and the rule will be filed in October. There'll be another hearing, and hopefully will be adopted in December and effective in March. And part of the goal of the schedule, which we know is a little accelerated on the comment period, is we're trying to get this, so that the code is known before the next construction season really gets going full swing. And I skipped over the fact that the yellow RV handbook that a lot of people have referred to is built, that will either be updated or a different sort of supplemental informational piece will be developed to support people who are using the residential code. So again, public comments for this round due July 9th. You can go online. This link will be posted on the website. more louder? Can you guys hear me in the back or not on the phone? Nobody can?
Oh.
Okay. So choice, 2012 or 2015. And, in considering this, the sort of a first principle we want to let people know is whether we pick 2012 or 2015 doesn't necessarily have an implication for the stringency of the code. Because in Vermont, we're going to adjust the stringency to meet what we think is appropriate. So by bypassing 2012, it doesn't mean the code's a higher bar. And in effect, 2012 and 2015 are quite similar in terms of the stringency, but there's a fairly broad consensus that there were some clarifications, some definitions were better in 2015. They fixed some things in 2015 that were confusing to people in 2012. And they also added a separate section on existing buildings, which is one of the areas where a lot of people have been confused in the past. So, so we said, foundational document, let's use 2015, and we'll make adjustments from there. In the proposed changes, there's some important things that have not changed. The ventilation standard, 2015 IECC actually does have a different ventilation standard. We're not going to use that. We're going to use the same one, or we're proposing to use the same one that's been in place in Vermont for a number of years. We don't think that what's in 2012 actually is an improvement, so why change it just to confuse everybody? Keep it the same. Same thing with combustion safety. The combustion safety testing requirements that you have to meet in new construction now are going to be the same in the updated code. And again, administrative requirements for documentation. What you have to do to demonstrate that you're complying with the code, we're not changing that process. There are still 3 paths: the HERS approach, rating approach, the fast track or prescriptive tables, where if you meet all the requirements in this table, then you are going to comply with the code. And then there's also the res check option. There are some exemptions in the code that are staying the same. The hunting camp exemption is a Vermont-specific exemption. We're going to keep that. And the same thing with owner builders. And also, the code is written with the presumption that there are code enforcement officials who are, reading the code and paying attention. And we know that that's not the case in many jurisdictions in Vermont. So we added where applicable language in a lot of places where it says the local official having jurisdiction shall. We added where applicable to recognize that it's not always the case here. And there's a few Vermont-specific technical details. I'm not going to go into all of them right now, but things that have been in the past code. For instance, in multifamily construction, there's a requirement that you air seal the party wall and any penetration at the top of the party wall. That's staying the same. It makes sense. It's not specifically addressed in the IECC version of the code.
Sorry, you're saying there's no change to ventilation from current revenue?
Correct. Yeah.
That's not how I read the
We struck the ventilation chapter and imported word for word the 2011.
Maybe it's hard to read the
It's definitely hard to read the document. There definitely are formatting issues because we only got a PDF that we then exported to Word, and it's done all kinds of weird things. So it's also possible, I mean, we've read through it a number of times, it's also possible that we missed something. So if you read it and you're like, this is not the same as it was, flag it for us and we'll go look at it again. By all means.
We ask that we get a more readable copy of the document. I think this is, since you're having such a condensed comment period.
Yeah,
I know my staff has already read through this, and in the ventilation section, it struck us as something that was quite changed. So obviously we're reading it wrong, and your comments are going to be all over the map.
Well, we'll post a clean copy. We wanted people to be able to see the red line, so we're happy to post the copy and we'll do that.
Yes. Okay. So just sort of a laundry list of areas where we think where we are proposing some changes because we think they make sense. And we'll go through these in more detail. But I just want to call out, there's a big definition section at the beginning. There's some updated definitions that are trying to clarify things that came through. Many of them came through in the 2015 IECC version. Some of them we may have updated. I don't think there's anything substantive in those definitional changes. They're just trying to be clarifying. So I'm not going to go through them, but I call attention to them for your review. There are some tables on our values and U factors that the code says no matter what you do, you have to meet these. Now, in the versions that we're proposing, that's not necessarily true. but I do want to call it out. In the code, those are changed. They're updated, and we'll look at those in more detail. They're on the HERS compliance path in the past. Okay, I'm going to have to ask for help there. How many people know what you had to hit on the HERS to meet code in the past? 70? 75? 75. So based on a bunch of analysis of what people, at least who are going through Efficiency Vermont programs, are actually achieving, we're proposing to reduce that required HERS score to meet the base code to 60. And the stretch code we're proposing is actually at 54 points on the HERS scale.
So you're changing both REVIs and stretch. I mean, the stretch code obviously will change, but you're saying that for REVIs it's going to go from 75 to 60.
Yes. Yep. Which sounds like a big jump. The reality is, at least for folks who are going through the program, on average, are doing much lower than the 60 already. But
what's the average? I guess is it? Are you looking at the overall number of homes that are going through this system, or are you the total number, or how are you addressing averages?
So the Department of Public Service did a 100-home new construction baseline study last year, and the average, the numbers were around in the 70s for non-participating homes. For participating homes, they were around 60. And the standards, looking at the HERS results of the standards that are in 2015 bring you to HERS 60. So the average, let me pull up the numbers because I do have those, and let's come back to that. Okay, we'll get that right.
We'll do some comparisons on features as well. But
So this is new construction, not rehab?
correct.
But if, on the REVIs, if you do a certain amount of rehab, you are pulled into the new construction definition.
And that's something that's actually quite a bit clarified in the 2015, which we can look at. We can look at at a very high level, and if it turns out that that's one of the areas where people want to dig in, then we can put the code up on the screen and we can do that. Okay. So 1654, and correspond. So we'll update the prescriptive tables, the fast track tables, to correspond to those, and we'll show you those in a few minutes. So there are a variety of different ways that if you do everything that's on the table, you're going to meet code without having to do the HERS rating. We also updated the requirements for log homes. And interestingly, in the past, there's been sort of a log home exemption where it wasn't quite as stringent a requirement. And the log industry this time around said, no, we don't want that anymore. We want to be held to the same standards as every other form of construction in the state. So there have been some discussions that we've come up with a prescriptive approach to get them to that HERS 60. There's also proposed requirements for blower door testing in new construction, which we'll look at in more detail. 2015, the national code says all new construction is blower door tested. What we're proposing in Vermont is that stretch code is going to get blower door tested. Again, we'll look at that and we'll talk about that more. I want to hear what people have to say about that because we've been hearing some push on both sides of that. Some people saying it should be all construction, and some people saying that's too onerous a requirement. There's a lighting efficacy change. There's an exemption for, well, we'll get into it. So something I want to call out, and then the existing building sections that I've talked about a couple of times. So, and Richard's still looking for data. And this is when he's supposed to take over. Do you want me to do this one?
We can transition here. So we did to answer Chris's question. So the homes, 100 average homes that the baseline study was done, the average HERS rating was 70. The average homes that that went through the program, the Efficiency Vermont program, were 52. So those are a combination of Code Plus, Energy Star, and the few that were high performance homes. So 60, so then and then I got the data for each of those. It's in the 60s for the Energy Code Plus. And so the objective of the code is to move us up the efficiency scale. And so considering the fact that the average home in Vermont not going through a program is 70, program homes are well below 60. It seemed like 60 was a reasonable target to move towards. So, so that's where that came from. So I'm going to be going through some of the details that Jim teed up, and we want to make sure that we've got enough time to address these issues. So I'm going to do a little bit of timekeeping. I think we're certainly doing pretty well right now. But I mean, let's get into as much detail on these topics as we want. But we may have to defer some of the discussions if we go too far down in the weeds on some of these. So the basis of what we're looking at is what's in the 2015 code. The foundation for it are these two tables, and since most people don't speak in U factors, I'm not going to focus on that. But this is what these are the values that we're sort of basing our equivalency and the prescriptive fast track packages on as well. So we're in climate zone 6. All of Vermont is. So we're looking at a U value for windows of 0.32, a double glazed low E window. Typically, there's certainly others that are better than that. Skylight, double glazed, essentially R49 ceiling. The big change from the current code is an inch of foam sheeting, essentially what they're calling for. So 2x6 with an inch of foam or equivalent. And we've got a number of trade-offs and different ways that you can get there. But that's the big change from the current 2009 version of the IUCC. But our what's in the yellow Arby's book is essentially based on an R20 wall. So that's probably the significant difference in the new code.
Can you back up? So this is for stretch.
No, this is base. Just base.
Are you changing base, or are you?
Yeah, base is going from HERS 75 right now, and the equivalent to HERS 60. So we'll talk about base first, and then we'll talk about stretch.
And, sorry, and so the wall will need to be R.
20, 25, 20 plus an inch of foam, or an equivalent. There are a number of ways that you can demonstrate equivalency. But this is the table that's right out of the code, the 2015 National Code.
And just to clarify, so the code says you can't build anything that doesn't meet these standards. That's what 2015 IUCC says. What we're proposing for Vermont is some flexibility. There are a number of different ways. So if you don't want to do the contiguous insulation, which for some people is going to be a cost burden or a challenge, make up for it in heating system efficiency. The 2015 IUCC doesn't say that you can do that, but we think that we need to have a flexible approach here. So that's how we've approached the prescriptive packages and the HERS pack.
Yeah, so that's an important point. So the National Code has these values. I'll walk across the rest of them. But they also assume that you're putting in NACA minimum compliant equipment. So National Appliance Energy Conservation Standards. Basically, a 78% furnace and an 82% boiler. And we know that nobody's putting that stuff in. Everybody's putting in more efficient equipment. So if we take that into account, we're going to be able to trade off some of these features against higher efficiency. As long as the bottom line performance is equivalent or better, that's an allowable approach.
Is that only a HERS rating? Is performance only HERS, or is performance can be a res check?
It won't. We're working with DOE on the res check. In the past, you haven't been able to trade it off on res check. So we will have some prescriptive packages, and you'll see that. So there'll be some packages that take that into account, or you can go the HERS approach. The problem is DOE has this conundrum that they're in.
they are threatened to be sued by the appliance manufacturers if they don't base the package on minimum efficient equipment. And so they base their national codes on minimum efficient equipment and don't allow you, and coming up with this, don't allow you to trade it off. So, but we can, as long as we have a package in there that has the minimum efficient equipment, we can put in other packages as well that meet the same performance criteria. Jeff?
And your wall framing, the 20 plus 5, 13 plus 10, you mentioned foam. Is it true that that would be, the second number could be continuous insulation?
Yeah. Yeah, that's right. So it could be 6, for instance. But the way this reads, the way that IECC reads these, the first value is cavity insulation, the second value is continuous. But there are a lot of equivalency. I mean, so you can, if you want to figure out what your U factor is for your walls, as long as it's 0.045 or less, and we have some tools that will help us do that. I mean, the easiest way to determine equivalency is with a Hertz rate. So then you get full credit for solar orientation, you get full credit for air leakage, because you can see that neither of those requirements in the code. So anytime you do something to improve the performance of the building through one of the performance mechanisms, you'll be able to get credit for it. We've got a log home package, so that will come up a little later. R30 in the floor, R15 basement, 10 slab edge. So these numbers represent 15 is continuous. The second number would be cavity. Tim? Okay, sorry. Right?
Yeah. One suggestion I would have on this, if I'm assuming that you pick it up,
Yeah.
that I would recommend that you expand on the walls in there. For instance, showing the different wall system types that are used in Vermont. For instance, a double 2x4 construction wall. All the different kinds of walls. A lot of our architects we work with, drawings are all available for the different wall types for the most part. That would be really helpful.
One of the things that, good suggestion. One of the things we are talking with NEAT, if Darren Ford is here from the Northeast Energy Efficiency Partnership, is the potential of revising this document. We realize as well that there are many requirements that are in the code that don't get picked up in this. A lot of little things. And so while this is a useful document, or sort of a high-level tool, it doesn't include all of those elements. We want to strike a balance between what's useful for builders and architects and those in the field, and but make sure that we capture the code element. So we haven't had a conversation yet, but I know there's some discussion. NEAP is interested in working with us in sort of a combination field guide handbook document. So if people have some ideas around that, talk to Taryn, or I mean, is that fair to say?
Yeah, that's fair to say. We're also working on a code adoption toolkit that will be able to be customized and be able to be used. So that will offer as well technical assistance along the lines that you're talking about.
Jeff?
Just curious on the basement R value for the Family Bridge that's dropping to R19 from the current R20. Slab edge R value dropping to 10 from 15. And the same with the crawl space wall on the Family Bridge. Last time around, the reason we went to 20 was essentially consistency between above grade and below grade. Thinking being we would actually have 2 levels of insulation, are they going to be installed in the right place? That was seemed to be easily accepted in the field, and the potential possible exception of the slab edge of our thinking that is architecturally challenging. Just curious though, and I also don't see the standard. What is the requirement in a heated slab under the slab?
don't. Yeah, we did say our 15 under slab on some prescriptive tables when we were doing the modeling. But this is the table that we pulled right out of the 2015 book. But you're saying that sorry. So last time the basement was
15 and 20.
15 and 20.
And column over was 15, and then 15 and 20 again was what's going to go.
Okay. So that sounds like that's a recommendation. I mean, it's consistent with what we're doing now, and you haven't found any issues or pushback or thoughts?
I would say that the slab edge 15 is really difficult to accomplish in town situations. And I would shudder to think how many hours we spent on a project that had housing over a garage and therefore a slab edge, and how to figure out how to bear a building on a foundation wall that also has an R15 along that whole edge. I bet you we spent 50 hours on that detail. And when you factor everybody on the script on it, it's excruciating to figure out what to high-density structural fault and all sorts of complications, and it really is complicated. Maybe there's a way to aspire to in certain situations, but when you have particular building types, it's very difficult and extremely costly. Extremely costly for the client.
So I'm hearing the 10 is more achievable, but the 15 is what we have in the current code. Okay, so we're gonna get this throughout the day in our comments as well. I'm sure. We want to aspire to a higher level of efficiency, but we want to take into account reality and what it takes and costs to build these places. Back.
Are those two tables supposed to be correct? Is the top and the bottom supposed to be the same as what's the U value? 0.05, that would suggest you started it's got to be 20.
It does, doesn't it? Yeah. Basements are an interesting one because you've got all the ground effects as well. So the U values aren't always, and I'm looking to Dave, I guess, but aren't always equivalent when you look at the overall performance of the basement wall with the benefits of ground behind it as well, in addition to the insulation. So this is
not allowing you to take credit for the ground. You're saying to me, if I chose not to do, even though it's not obvious that the 10 is contiguous insulation, I guess it is.
Yeah, that's correct. Contiguous. Yeah.
Well, it doesn't say that. And if I were to say, well, geez, I got a different way to do it, so I would have to get to an R20 if I use the one class.
Or you do it through a performance modeling approach, and take that into account. But
Because I don't understand why you could do that. Why is the basement U factor only 1? Why is, if you're going to have a 10 above, why is that only 1?
I think these are straight out of 2015, and I think maybe we should look into that a little more and try to understand what they're specifically saying on that U factor, because we're not, and on the one hand, because we're not saying that we're going to hold people to these tables, and sometimes we're putting up as an illustration of what's in 2015, and then we'll talk about the flexibility that we're proposing. But at this point, we just copied it right out of 2015. With everything that, so.
I disagree with your approach entirely. I think every builder is going to look at this table as absolute gospel.
Yep.
And therefore is going to try and do what it says here. And then it needs to be consistent finally.
So that's a great point. Let us look into that in more detail and what the language around the tables is and so forth.
Okay, well, the top slab edge R value is not in the bottom U factors. That's the basement wall factor, not the slab edge.
Right, so it's a
correct.
That's right, but you were correct that the 0.05 U value would be an R20 equivalent. Basement wall factors don't match up. That's correct.
We left. Yeah.
With the 20 plus 5 and the 13 plus 10, how is a double wall system factored into that? You don't have an exterior continuous layer of sheathing, but you're still maintaining thermal.
all different combinations of walls and configurations and sheathing and whatnot. And my personal feeling on all this is that ultimately we're going to get to the point where we're going to need to do some sort of modeling for all these buildings as we move, the next versions of the codes going forward. So clearly it would perform better if there's a double wall filled with insulation. Your best approach is to probably do a HERS rating and determine what the benefit of that is.
But we can't get an Act 250 permit in the current draft to do that, to get a HERS rating or a red check form. We can do that, but we can't get a permit to build the building. So that's where there's the disconnect. Yeah, you could go and do a HERS rating after the fact, but I've got to suppose that I'm going to meet this certain level, and that's a big problem.
Okay.
So we need to. So I will bring it up realistic points about some of those concerns.
Okay. So let's move on. This is the basis, but we've got a number of different options that we're putting forward as well here. So one of the things that we wanted to do right now, we indicated that there's a HERS 75 as the basis for compliance, but it isn't explicit anywhere actually. I mean, you look online and you look in the handbook, and it was determined, and it seems like people who are in the know what it is, but we felt like it would be good to sort of establish what the HERS rating is, but then provide some flexibility in terms of how you get there. So we had a lot of discussions about how much, and the HERS, as most of you probably know, is a total picture of the energy performance of the building. So that could include efficiency of the envelope, the equipment, efficiency, and any solar as well that contributes towards it. So there's a net impact if you put PV on the roof or solar hot water system. So the base of the code is around efficiency. You want to make sure that there's some minimum level of efficiency in our home, but then allow some for credit for putting solar in these places as well. So what the approach that we've taken, and we're open to your perspective on this, is that if we set 60 or whatever we end up establishing as the base code target, we don't want somebody to build a leaky, inefficient home, load it up with PV, and say it meets code. So there needs to be some balance between efficiency and renewables, and this is the suggestion that we have going forward, that you need to, without taking into account renewables, you need to, through the HERS process, if this is the path you take, you would need to achieve at least a 65 before renewables. And then, but you can make up that additional 5 points either through efficiency or through renewables. So what this does as well, it begins the conversation about renewables in our buildings. We know that Vermont has a goal by 2050 to provide 90% of our energy in the state with renewables. Want renewables to be part of the conversation at this point in time. So without requiring, a number of states are doing a solar-ready requirement where they are requiring you to have space on your circuit panel, put a chaseway up to the attic, have structural space on the roof that faces south. We're a little concerned about adding additional cost without value in every instance. So this is a way to begin to get renewables in the picture and allow you to get credit for it at the same time.
Before you go past that, I guess the question in my mind is, so if I want to spend a bunch of money to put a renewable on the roof or wherever I'm going to do it, get the renewable from your house. Why would you want them to go to their house?
Well, we want to strike a balance. So, I mean, if the consensus is that we don't want to take renewables into account in the code and not give credit for it, that's certainly something we can do. So, but this was a way to ensure that there's a minimum level of efficiency. You've got to achieve a HERS 65, but let the market have the choice in terms of how you want to meet those last 5 points. And right now, to get back to Chris's question, most of the average score for the participating homes of Vermont Star Homes program is HERS 52. And the average baseline home out there is 70, non-program home. But we'll throw this out there. Do people think that this is an unreasonable approach? Should we not allow for renewables as part of achieving code? Should we hold the line for just efficiency?
You just said that you wanted to get houses to be efficient, but you're not building houses to be efficient. You're building houses to be efficient. That's what you just said. Here it is. Without any renewable, you get to build a house to 65. Here.
It's an option, but I think probably the 5 points would be much, much less expensive through efficiency than through renewable.
I don't think there's any question about that. That's what I'm saying. Why aren't you building the thing? You got to get to 16 if you want to spend money on some renewable to reduce your net overall cost to operate your house. More power to you.
Does anybody else in the room have an opinion on that? I mean, we value that opinion. I'm not dismissing it in any way, but I'm curious about what other viewpoints.
Just one more point. You can make the same argument about efficiency of the equipment. You can say, should we give people credit for putting in a 90% furnace, or should it just be about the envelope? I think it's a similar sort of philosophical approach toward balancing efficiency, renewables, and the equipment.
Or you just reverse what your minimum requirements are. You say code minimum is 65 plus some definition of renewables, or no renewables activity. I think that I hear it is that you're basically giving a reward to somebody. They can build a less expensive envelope if they put renewables on it. You're going to should go the other way around. If you want the code minimum is 65 plus renewables, or 60 without renewables.
That's initially it. If the end goal is reduced energy usage in the home, what do you care how you get it? Whether you get it by building extremely tenor shell or by supplying it in some other way that doesn't use fossil fuels. As far as I'm concerned, the end results will be looking at this increase.
I think it's good to have the trade-off because it gives the flexibility for the developer to look at the payback, and which is changing over time. Solar PV went down, so I think it's good to have that so you can make your decision about what's the best investment, whether it's the wall or the renewable.
I guess my only comment is about that target rate. That if you look at the Vermont Star home, or Energy Star home, you have Energy Code Plus, which Efficiency Vermont created because they realized nobody would, or from a general builder population, wasn't going to meet the Energy Star requirement in 2013. And so Energy Code Plus came out of that. And even the Energy Code Plus component lost a lot of builders. So here you are using an average score number that is well below what most people are building. So 100 home average is a pretty, you have a couple of people that are doing HERS ratings at, 20.
Okay, those are non-participants. So that's the general population, not including Energy Star home.
Yes. Okay.
The 70.
But you're going to have those couple of houses that are going to be 20 or lower, or 25s or 30s or whatever the number is, and it's going to skew that average number down lower because we build 30, 40, 50 homes a year, and we're getting HERS ratings in the 65 range, and we do it every day, and so we understand that. But to go to 60, it's like, when are you going to expect that everybody's going to participate more? And then, as an active district developer, you're going to go even lower. And I understand that's code, but I think that the the way that the target number was reached is unattainable for the general public from a pricing standpoint. Because all of a sudden, we're going to see existing homes be sold more quickly and more often, and I'm going to be out of business. So there's a choice.
Is there a number that you feel would be more realistic?
I mean, if your average is 70, why can't we just get everybody to start meeting the code and be at 70?
Well, so this is the whole question of compliance is, it's sort of the elephant in the room. And while we acknowledge that that's out there and that's a huge issue for builders especially, but for everybody, and we need to consider it. We're not here to resolve the compliance issue. We want to consider it because there is a balancing act between how far do we raise the bar so that people can try to go for it, and at what point do people just throw up their arms and say, I'm not going to even bother? So it's sort of the balancing act. But our goal is to move up the ladder towards ultimately, in some point in the future, zero energy homes. I mean, that's where we need to ultimately get to.
I, as a builder, this is 100% the reason I'm here. 100% the reason I'm here is the compliance issue. Is that it is such an on-level playing field out there, and so we're losing. I lost a house last week because some other builder came in and they don't even care about the energy code. They're just building it. They're skipping the stuff, and this is where we are today. If truly the goal is to get to net zero by 2050, the only way you're going to get there is to pick up these other builders. You're going to get those people that are outside of the system, in the system, into the code. And by taking and just keeping ratcheting up the standards for the people that are building it isn't doing anything for the majority of the people that aren't using it.
I've got a comment. So the other aspect of this is the consumer side, right?
Yeah.
Consumers are not educated about what they should be expecting when they are getting ready to purchase a contract on a home from a builder. I don't think half of them have any expectation. They just think, oh, it's going to be insulated, great. And so there's an educational component there that is really important because they shouldn't be signing contracts with somebody that can't stand up and say, I'm going to meet these specifications. And they need to understand what those specifications are and how they're going to be met. If they're not educated in that aspect, right, and they're the ones that are going to be paying the money for it, then that's half the battle right there.
We build all over New England, and in the rest of the states, there is a clear way that you build. There's a building department that houses energy codes, plumbing codes, building codes, electric codes. You submit to them. You have to demonstrate you're going to meet the codes. You get a permit, you build, you get inspected, you're certified at the end. This Vermont going down this path of having these codes with no process in place, it's absurd. And to just say that it's the elephant in the room, we're not going to address it, it has to be addressed. Otherwise, this stuff doesn't matter.
I'd like to absolutely echo that. This is a building code. It should be administered like a building code, and if that's a compliance issue, now that you're saying that towns that get COs, you have to certify that, this is a compliance issue. And what's going to happen to my title if I lose that certification? And towns now, like my town of Heinsberg, is looking at adopting an energy code, and I think it's a huge mistake for towns to be doing that. It's complex to say that your home has met that certification, and now it's going to be in the zoning ordinance, and it's going to cause a title problem for homes when they try to sell in the future. So this really does need to be treated like a building code. It's complex. And to have it out there, so we don't have the compliance, we're trying to get at it through the back door, through the CO, through Act 250, which is for a developer, and just gives shivers down like that. But this is now going to be embedded in Act 250. So dodging the compliance issue is unfair to the many builders out there. And if we really are serious about what we're doing, I think there needs to be a building code administered by our Division of Fire Safety.
So I just want to say, I don't think we're dodging the compliance issue. I'm saying that it's an issue that's out there. We acknowledge it. The state has a plan for it and is chipping away at it. The reality, we could spend all day talking about compliance. I know it's an integral part of all this. The issue is it costs money to put in place building code officials. And the state of Vermont is not willing to spend money doing this. I mean, your town, I know my town isn't about to fund another position. So I think that's sort of the fundamental issue here is that, we're not willing as a state to spend the money to have a statewide uniform compliance approach.
It's a legislative issue. It's not something we can do through an administrative process. I'm sure I understand that. So we don't disagree with this at all.
Right.
But
Well, it may be a reason we can slow down on the adoption of the stretch code because there, even though there's legislative language attached to it, meeting your schedule could be a bad idea. It might be fruitful to return to the legislature and point out that some of the statutory language actually is not working well on a practical level. So clearly one of our comments is going to be to slow down.
if I could, what I suggest now, I've got 60 up here, something that we want to talk about more. But I think if we go through some of the other slides and look at what the descriptive tables are and so forth, that'll inform the conversation. If that's all right?
Yeah. Scott,
I had a question. I was actually switching gears in regards to the rating.
52 is the average for program homes. Those have gone through efficiency program.
Is that all homes, or is that Energy Star?
No, that's Code Plus, Energy Star Home, and Hybrid Home.
So the majority of those homes took that new home we've experienced on the Code Plus homes.
Can I clarify also that most of the reason that the number in Energy Star has dropped has been not from the efficiency score required, but the administrative requirements involved with key and the certifications required by HVAC contractors. The scores for the Energy Code Plus homes, for the most part, would qualify as Energy Star homes without those other criteria. In terms of builder loss, yes, we've lost builders from Energy Star, but most of them have gone into Energy Code Plus. We haven't overall lost very many builders. And this year, the actual HERS average program-wide participants, successful and unsuccessful, is 51.
Okay, so do you want to talk about whether 60 is the right target or not? Take a minute. I'm curious that.
Well, I was actually suggesting that we go through the prescriptive tables and everything, and so we can illustrate a little bit. This is what, on a prescriptive basis, it takes to get to the 60.
We got it on the list. We'll come back to that. So in terms of what is a HERS 60, this is an example of an average composite home. So where this is where HERS 75 is right now, and this column here, and so these, what's in red would be the changes that would get you to HERS 60. So right now there's no provisions for how insulation is installed. So grade 1, which is the ResNet grading for basically it's per manufacturer's instruction. The rest of the features would be the same. The big saving impact is to make it tighter. So that's actually the 3 air changes per hour, 50 pascals, is the national standard for climate zone 6 that's in IECC 2015. So the rest of the country is moving there. And so it seems, maybe David or Jeff, you have a sense of, do you know what the average ACH 50 is for program homes these days? I don't know what that number is, but I know it's tighter than 5.
Several years ago,
yeah, so I know that we're...
and it's a very tight bill. The only thing I looked at on that chart is the actual 62.2. I don't know that would have impact. That some might say it's right.
Actually, you're absolutely right. This slide we took from previous stakeholder group meeting, and we decided in the interim to just lift in the existing ventilation standard. After the ASHRAE 62.2 is what's in the IECC, but we determined there are enough issues around that nationally. The national experts on ventilation can't even decide on some of the provisions in 62.2. So let's not go there. Let's take what worked and just move that, lift that, and move that going forward. So you're right, Jeff. That would be different there. And the lighting requirement as well. So right now there's a 50% code lighting. 50% of the fixtures need to be efficient, and now the 80% would bring it up to 160. Yeah.
I noticed you're back to the 15 at the slab edge. Would you be able to make that up in some other fashion?
Yes.
Yeah, definitely.
And if I could speak to that very briefly, on every single one of the envelope items, we looked at those, R value for wall, R value for, that, what the code says is you have to get to that level of overall performance. And one way of getting there is to have each of those pieces at exactly that number. But that's only one option. That ends up being package 1, typically. And then there are other packages that get you to the same level of performance. And if you use the ResCheck software, you have lots and lots of almost unlimited options to get to the same level of performance. I would like to echo the complaint about the R15 requirement, because I hear that over and over again from designers and builders, and I think that is an issue. And if the feds require that the R15 slab edge be in the first package, we can do that, but I would suggest that all the other packages are designed for R10 slab edge. And then, of course, if you go to the ResCheck software, you can do R10 slab edge, or maybe even R5, depending on what else you're doing in the building.
Yeah, good point. Yep.
Boiler and furnace numbers flipped around there?
No, those are the Energy Star standards, I believe now. That's so we could so this these numbers are the national standard. Energy Star is in that range. I believe those are right.
Your code little sheet on that, or that little thing before said that you needed to have an R25 wall sample, and what you're showing here to get an R60 is an R20 wall.
Yeah, you can't. I mean, this is with the HERS rating. We're trading off. We're trading off those other values. So that was. We took the same home with those. You understand that?
I understand that. Yeah. But what you're saying is we're going to require an R25 on the code.
No, what we're saying those initial values for the basis of the code. So we're taking what we did. We took the average composite Vermont home. These 100 homes went out there, so we know how many square feet of each wall area, and we plugged those values into that home, came up with the total energy consumption, MMBTUs per year, and then we run through all, and you'll see we have some other packages. We run through, and they all have to either be equivalent or do better. And this is one of those packages that would get you there, just using a HERS as an example.
So just so I'm clear, I understand. So that table, 402.1.2, that's your table if you're going to demonstrate compliance prescriptively, or you have the option of doing a HERS rating and doing a performance.
Yeah, we have some other prescriptive packages. That table is the basis for equivalency for any of the pads.
But it's not code requirement.
No. No.
I wouldn't put it, take it out and show it. Yeah. Go ahead and show it.
Yeah, that's good advice.
Traditionally, those values have just turned into package 1.
Yeah.
Right?
So there it is. So we've done this process. We've run this Vermont home through a number of iterations, and so here are some examples of packages that meet the same energy performance. The package 1 is the one in the table that we that came right out of 402.2, and then the values that are highlighted, and these other ones are those that changed. There's some discussion amongst those of us who've been working on this about whether it's appropriate to trade off 100-year-old building components against a 20 or 25-year lifetime of a heating system. And from DOE's perspective, you at least need to have one package with the minimum efficient equipment. And so it is the right approach for us to allow equipment that has a shorter lifetime to take credit instead of putting better envelope measures in the building. And it's sort of a, so there's both sides, and there's legitimate discussions on both sides. In fact, that's one of the, so these three packs, we have to have one, as I mentioned. DOE will get sued, or we'll be in trouble if we don't have one. But should we be putting in higher efficiency equipment here in order to reduce these other values like we did in package 4? Is that an appropriate approach for the state to take, to trade those 100-year measures off against the 20 or 25-year piece of equipment?
I would say yes, especially since SEER ratings are up in the 20s in the highest efficiency cooling systems. So why wouldn't you push at least one package in that direction for people who want to put cooling in their house?
The odds are that when you renew that equipment, it's going to be equal or better.
Right. That's yeah. So, and Dave, I know your coworkers feel very strongly about this issue.
Yeah, and when we went from the first iteration where you could trade off the heating equipment to the second iteration in 06 when you couldn't, or 05, I thought that was crazy, but I've since changed my mind. I'm not going to say any more about that. I would just like to note for those who are concerned about the stringency of the code, that if you look at package 4, those thermal envelope values are no more stringent than the current code. They're basically the same as the current code that we have right now. So what that means is that
this is the difference.
The ACH50 is the difference, but the vast majority of new homes in Vermont would meet that anyway as they're currently being built. At least that's my belief. Jeff, you see more of the numbers than I do.
But if that's a prescriptive table, how are you demonstrating 3 ACH50?
We'll get to that conversation about required blower door test or not.
Anyway, I just wanted to point out that if you're putting in a boiler that's more than 85% and you're building the shell to the current code, that's that package right there.
Yeah, looking out at 2050, sorry about that, but somewhere in here, I think, maybe not this version, maybe the next version, you need to start thinking about how do you show a package that gets you in that direction.
So a heat pump package?
Yeah. And also those 4 years back that you're never going to get to 0 without it, right? You're never going to get to 0.
That's a great suggestion.
You don't live in your house. You put your lights on, you're just never going to get there. But we need to have that report in somewhere in the system.
Yep.
Well, I was just going to say, but can you put in, if this is the code minimum, is putting in that prescriptive path to a heat pump, you've got a building envelope in that path that's well above code minimum. They're not equivalent, right? You can't put a heat pump in with today's technology. You can't put a heat pump path in that will work with a building envelope over here. Like you're basically, if this is a table of code minimums, a heat pump path is not code minimum. It's a totally different thing.
You could develop with today's cold climate heat pump, as long
With a standard building envelope,
we'll have to look at
I wouldn't build that in Northeast.
Yeah, but there are heat pumps
That was the only source, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
It'll work. But there are plenty of homes out there in Vermont right now. I have one, and it's 20 below with the heat pump is putting out.
Building envelope.
I've got a good building.
Yeah, your building envelope. That's what I'm saying.
You have to.
You can't take if you've got a code minimum. You're saying this is your code minimum. By its very nature, a house that's only using an air source heat pump is far above and beyond a code minimum house.
Well, I think that's what Bill was saying, is that maybe there's package 5.
It's another. But
if you're over in package 5, package 7, you're not comparing yourself. You're not saying, okay, I want to pick this package, this package, this package, this package. Because you're building something so far beyond the other packages. It's not equivalent, not with the other packages.
Yeah, I mean, so get a first rate. I mean, maybe that's the
Or do whatever the heck you want and build your own net zero house. And this is the baseline for everybody else.
So maybe it's something that Efficiency Vermont does in the high performance homes, and they're trying to promote that, they have a package with a key pump that gets you the
Not
zero. Yeah. Not necessarily yet, the code may get there over the next few years. One thing I just want to, and letting this table to, and I know that this is true, people would like to see a prescriptive package that has an R10 slab edge.
Yes, yeah, I've heard that. Yeah.
None of these do.
Actually, all of them except the first one.
Yeah. None of these do, so that's what we won't look at.
Have you folks in your consideration of these codes, I feel like I'm sort of wearing two hats here. In our practice, we don't do very good single-family homes. We do a few. We do more multi-family developments, and a lot of those fall under the residential code. And it seems to me that it's unusual because the difference between a 3-story building that's residential and a 4-story building is residential code versus commercial code. They're two completely different codes.
Yeah.
And a multi-family residential building is not what this code is all about. Really, I mean, this is about a single-family home, an immediate duplex. And has there been any discussion about should there be a different cutoff when you go from residential to commercial? Because some of these things were done, this slab edge is a lot easier to meet on a single-family home than it is on a multi-family building sitting on top of apartment garages. Not that it's easy to meet on a single-family home, but you can do it. And a lot less complicated detail. And so that's my question: who made the decision that a 52-unit 3-story building should follow this code compared to a 46-unit 4-story building that falls included in the code? There's a huge inconsistency there.
I mean, it sort of falls back to beyond energy, right? I mean, it's across all the codes, isn't that's the break point.
Yeah, I mean, so that's a great point, Bob. We discussed before, and I believe we're going to talk about this with PSC. And even if we wanted to say that about if we want to change it in our code, it conflicts with Vermont statute that defines the definition of commercial residential building beyond energy from that definition. So if you want that change to happen, it literally has to be at that level or our energy code. I don't think it's state of Vermont, I mean, a public building that anything more than 2 buildings, 2 residential units. As far as our residential construction code, we have 3 units. We're commercial building. Yeah, we're the limit. So that conflicts with what we were.
Yeah. We go by stories, as Bob indicated. Up to 3 stories is residential, and over is commercial. But it sounds like that's a different standard.
We should try to look into it around that. Yeah, it's all another code, all that.
Yeah.
But I think the bottom point is that on a national, so if we include the statute conflict, we should clearly look into if on a national basis, maybe that 4 stories no is the same, but in Vermont where 14 is the highest building you've got, a 3-story building really is built. I mean, and some of the practices that that's still playing.
Well, the 3-story residential isn't building. I mean,
it's not like a single family.
Yeah. Well, but it's held to that standard.
Yeah.
And so, I can do a 4-story residential building with a R30 roof, but a 3-story building has to have an R49. And I'm not saying
I'll be.
the market. Somebody's going to say.
And I'll be here by 11. I'm hoping to leave by 3.
Oh, yeah.
2?
Okay.
No, I wasn't going to, but I have to because I have so much.
Excuse me, folks on the phone, we can hear your conversation. If you wouldn't mind muting, we would appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah, I think.
There seems to be kind of a disconnect there between.
Audio. I'm not muted on my phone. It's a conference call that I'm automatically muted on.
Okay, well, good.
I don't have an audio pin.
That's a good plan.
Okay.
I think we switched over like the other.
Can whoever on the phone, can you please put the phone on mute?
Oh, yeah.
We can hear your conversation.
All right.
Thank you.
So, actually, sort of to answer your first question, it's not something we really discussed at all in the context of updating the code, whether the definitions were correct. So, but I would take it.
I have another one.
Yeah.
Muted.
There you go. There we go. Okay. Just went to green. Okay. So the provisions are such that either towns have the option of adopting a higher level of efficiency, a stretch code, and it will become, the stretch code becomes requirement for Active 50 projects. So, we want to have this conversation here about where should the bar be set for stretch code. Where we started with is that for the first time, the 2015 IECC has in it, even though Vermont's been doing this for a while, but the first time nationally, home energy rating system HERS have gotten to the point where they're prevalent enough across the U.S. where they became recognized by the national code body and written into the code as a compliance option. So what IECC 2015 says for the first time, although we've been doing it for at least from the beginning, really, in Vermont, we've had a HERS system in place here. But they said if you want to comply with this code, you need to achieve a HERS 54. And so that was, while after doing the modeling, we realized that the Climate Zone 6 equivalent HERS rating for the average home in Vermont is 60. Whoever did the modeling nationally, and there's probably some, our assumption is that they probably want to make sure that you didn't trade your whole envelope off with the higher efficiency equipment. They set the bar pretty low for just base compliance. They set base compliance at 54. So we said, okay, they've got that HERS 54 standard in there. Maybe that's a reasonable place to set Vermont's stretch code level. So taking the same thinking about providing recognition for renewables, we went to the same approach, saying, okay, if the ultimate target is HERS 54, let's have an equivalent sub-target in terms of efficiency of 65. You remember for the base code, we said you have to meet 65, and then those last 5 points you can either earn through renewables or efficiency. For stretch code, why don't we keep that sub-target the same, but allow projects to get to that ultimate target of 54 through renewables or efficiency, that last 11 points. Let the market figure out what's the least cost path to get there. Right now, my guess is it's probably efficiency. We see renewables coming down in cost. The market would be able to make that determination in the future going forward. So the HERS 54 is what we're putting forward, and be interested to hear your approach there. What this does is it essentially requires you to demonstrate compliance with a HERS rating. So that essentially means participating in the Efficiency Vermont program to demonstrate a HERS 54. The presumption as well is that probably every, I don't know if I can say that, but probably every Act 250, it's not every, most Act 250 projects currently participate in Efficiency Vermont program. Is that not the case? I'm looking at you builders, or Mike and Jeff would probably know as well. So they're probably already, majority are probably already taking advantage of those HERS services. And that would allow you right up front to use the HERS trade-off mechanisms to get there. We've talked to a number of the home builders, and it seems like many of the Act 250 projects are at 54 or better in the ballpark. We heard, some of them are, some may not be, but most are not. Most are not. Okay.
And the problem is, at the time of the Act 50 application, you haven't designed the building enough.
Yeah. So let's dig into that, because I do hear that as an issue.
The other thing I should point out is that when code occurs, we will likely need to revamp Efficiency Vermont services.
Yes.
In collaboration with the Department of Public Service, and our services have been above code.
Right. So that's right. That's a good point. So Efficiency Vermont needs to remain valid as an above code service. And so likely when this goes into effect next year, there would be a new series of Efficiency Vermont program tiers or offerings that would be above code.
And I'm assuming fees that are going to also increase the cost of the house. If we just want to meet code and we have Efficiency Vermont come out and we meet code, we're going to pay some sort of fee for that inspection.
For the rating. Unless
yeah.
But if you participate, I mean, I don't know what their future programs are going to look like, but right now there's no charge to participate in the Efficiency Vermont program. You get the benefit of the HERS rating and the technical advice and the certification at the end as well, and most times you get some incentive on top of that. So it's sort of, and the idea is that yes, it's a high bar, 54, but there is a path there, and there are already services that are available through Efficiency Vermont to help you meet it.
But is Efficiency Vermont now going to say no? For this group of buildings, your base code was right, but you had to go through Act 50, so your base code is a stretch code, and we will only. So you have to go above stretch code.
That's a great question. I don't know. My guess is that I'm looking at Jeff and I mean because
I don't know either, and I think that's a really good question. In general, we don't provide services and incentives for folks to we provide services to meet the code, but we don't generally pay incentives to do what you're already required to do by law. I mean, we're supposed to encourage people to do something better than that. But I'm not sure what the answer would be.
I'm hoping that the answer is there would be a program tier above code, but it's not requiring you to go above stretch code. But I don't make those decisions, and Efficiency Vermont has to justify their services through savings, and so the question is what's the baseline?
Yes, more. Yes.
Yeah, probably.
I can answer that. Efficiency Vermont won't be able to make savings for us with the project for incentivizing stretch. So we have a meeting with offer incentive
For just meeting stretch.
You might offer the.
But I would also point out that one of the things, the vast majority of Efficiency Vermont programs are voluntary, and they're all designed to do something better than is required by law.
Right.
But we do also run the Energy Code Systems Center, which is separate and which is available to anybody who wants to meet the code as an informational service. So that, I just want to point that out, that you can get whatever information we can give you to help out with code compliance through the Energy Code Systems Center.
This furthers the argument that the base ratings, the base compliance needs to get cleaved from Efficiency Vermont. Efficiency Vermont remains better than code, what they've been around to do for a long time. We just make the argument that there needs to be a group somewhere that is dedicated to just compliance with the energy code.
So just following on. Sorry, can I do that? Okay. So Kelly made, Kelly brought this point. We've been talking about it. I forgot to bring it up earlier. This would be a great time for the Home Builders Association and others to start lobbying the legislature about putting resources into code compliance and level the playing field, whether it's licensing builders or whatever it takes. But it's clearly you're at a disadvantage as builders who are trying to meet the law and trying to do the right thing. So. My editorial commentary would be, this would be a great time to have that conversation.
Can I just echo that very quickly and say that, especially regarding this compliance issue and enforcement, it's the most frequent criticism I hear from builders about the way the energy code is set up. And I think that I think these guys are right that it would require legislative action, and it's an economic question, and I'm very skeptical it's going to be changed in the short term. But it's impossible for it to be changed if we don't at least tell them that we want it changed. And so if everybody in this room goes to the website and puts in a comment that this is the one big thing they're concerned about, then at least we can make our voices heard. And I think the people they will pay the most attention to are the builders. Because if builders say
It's curious to me, and I just wondered if this is a coincidence or if it was planned, but it's curious to me that the stretch code target is 10% better than your PERS rating at 60. Is that coincidence, or that was derived from some thought process? Because as you know, Factor 50 says if you want an Factor 50 permit, you have to be 10% better than code. And this may be a question that's even more relevant in the afternoon session, because we've recently gone through several situations with this 10% better than code. Under the CVs, it's virtually impossible to get 10% better than code, because even if you lie, you can't get 10% better than code. So I just wondered if, is that a coincidence, or was there a thought process, or
I'd like to take credit for having being conscious about that. I mean, really, the basis was the fact that 54 was in the national code, and it seemed like a good way to align, and it was about the right difference between two. So, we didn't have 10% as a target, but it seemed like it was the right ballpark.
That's the number they use. If you can find something that says you're 10% better than even Active 50.
I should just clarify that from Active 50. For residential, you're required to meet the RVs. There isn't any 10%. If you meet the RVs, then you have met the presumption that you meet 9F under the criteria.
That might be more relevant for the stuff.
That message is still not out to your district coordinator.
That's not a clear. Is that the help?
In writing, they're not telling us. They're telling us to exceed it.
Right. Jump in the back. Right.
I don't want to go into water, but I guess I have to ask. Knowing that the legislature doesn't do anything very useful occasionally, the requirement comes on that decided that there should even be a stretch code for residential. Why did the legislature decide that this was a great idea, when in fact it makes a bunch of hats and not, when what you should have done was just fix the code so everybody has to get 54 and move on? Because it's an economic issue. You're already forcing half or whatever percentage of our housing stock to be more expensive to get to that number. And so, what was the point of creating it? Why wouldn't you say, make the code better so that everybody gets some stuff? Or at least you assume whether the builders will build that house or not, I don't know. But I don't understand why the legislature would pass something like this and say, we're going to have people, we're going to require one group of people to build a better house, and then everybody else can build this thing over here. What was the point of that?
You know, Kelly? I wasn't.
I actually don't know I don't know if it's something on. It started in the. I just was going to say, the House Natural Resource Committee is where this started, and I don't know. We didn't propose that. I don't know who originally proposed it, or if it's something one of the members came up with on their own. I really have no idea where it came from. I can say DPS, but I really don't know what the origin.
I don't either.
Because clearly I would suspect that the cost to go from 65 to 54 is more than it would cost you to have these solutions checked out.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure there was definitely discussion about other states around us and Massachusetts that are going for a stretch code, and I mean, you guys can probably answer better than me, but why? I mean, I know a lot of people talk about some of them that it kind of primes the market for the natural iteration of the code, but
That's a lot of the idea, is provide a glimpse into what the next version of the code 3 years down the road is going to be.
You just told us that I can build the same house tomorrow that I built yesterday, say putting better purpose in it. And I didn't have to do anything.
Right, and they just know. Yeah.
So that didn't work for me.
Yeah. And then just a quick comment with respect to the compliance side. The real problem with current RVs is the legislation states the failure to certify is not creating workable risk. That clean title. And right there, that undermines the benefit. If you were not, we're struck language went away, and it did create a market with the defective title with almost every lawyer, every lender, every realtor, and every builder, and making sure that they had a product that could be sold. I don't think we would need a significant state enforcement agency. If you couldn't sell a building, it wasn't in compliance with code. And here's what would happen. Some lawyer would say, 10 years ago, your house met code, because today, it's defective, you can't let our client buy it. Because that's exactly the stretch that will happen as soon as you do that. Absolutely will happen. Say, okay, I'm sorry, it doesn't meet today's code. It's like putting the smoke detector in the guy stopped it.
We're not going to solve this one right away.
And I think it's probably the legislative issue, not the one the department can fix, that if Efficiency Vermont can provide incentives because you're an X50 project and you need to meet stretch. So the X50 process easily adds $1,500 to $2,000 a unit to the cost of the project. And now I can't even get incentives from Efficiency Vermont for meeting stretch. So it's a very odd public policy. It's like going in two different directions, and it doesn't make sense.
It's encouraging sprawl versus because you see from an active perspective, there's lots of 9-lot subdivisions, and there's a reason. Then there's, if you go to 10, you might go 20 or 30 or 40 units because of the cost associated with that. So all you're going to do is emphasize that difference even more going for stretch code components. And that, in my mind, stretch code, I don't know how you can say this is the same as code. You know, I understand the legislature's out there, but is there a way that we can say, hey, we don't think that there's a fairness and there's a legal fairness issue about requiring an Act 250, and then there's also a public policy issue regarding it. And so I think that that's a big concern.
Well, what Kelly had to say about efficiency Vermont capability, I don't know this, but my assumption would be that we will try to have a 3-tier service, one above the base level code for those who are working in that area, one above the stretch code for those required to meet stretch code, high performance. That would be the logical move given our current structure and how we're regulated by the state. So I wouldn't necessarily think that there would be a class of homes that would not be able to receive service and efficiency.
So, you know, if you've got suggestions and structure on how the Efficiency Vermont services could change and benefit, be great. You know, put the comments into the website as well. We've heard them today, but I think it's good to have those things. Okay, so are we in the ballpark? If you know, for 54, you're saying no. You're saying we're too stringent for the stretch code. Are there other thoughts about? Yeah.
So you're proposing a stretch code because you think it's being legislated that we have to do this.
Well, it has been legislated. Yeah.
So I understand that. So in order to change that, then legislation has to be changed.
That's right.
To just say we're going to have a code and everybody lives by the code. I mean, I think when I think of the stretch code, and I'm basically in favor of doing things as energy efficient as we possibly can muster. When I think of the stretch code, I think of things like Burlington's inclusionary zoning ordinance. So if you are required to comply with the inclusionary zoning ordinance, that's a stick that has an impact on your development. But there's also a carrot that says you can have more density, you can have more lot coverage. If we're going to have a stretch code, it seems to me there should be something that says we're going to force people to go further, but at the same time we're going to give them something. I don't know what that give them something is, but if you have to go through Act 250 and you have to meet the stretch code, whereas the competitive builder isn't going through Act 250 and doesn't have to meet it,
not currently. No, it isn't. So when they adopt the stretch code, it specifically says residential properties have to meet Act 250 and towns have the option of adopting.
You were going to get back to the issue of how we demonstrate at the time of application.
Yes, thank you. So there isn't a way that a proposed rating can be issued based on. I mean, you have to have plans for your project. Now, you're saying yes. You're saying no. So get a rating. But to the Act 250 project, you're not that far along. I mean,
I have no idea what windows. I have no idea what wall sample. I have no idea whether or not I've got walkout basements or standard basements. How I'm going to insulate it. I don't know. I mean, I could be applying for an Act 250 permit. The reality is I may get it 5 years later.
But couldn't you say that when I have the details of construction, I will work to make it HERS 54.
That should be the way it is, but that's not the way it is.
They don't allow that. They used to, 20 years ago, they'd let you do that. They don't anymore.
Well, that's why we used to have this thing that says we'll meet the residential building energy standard.
Right. I mean,
we check the box and we certify we're going to do that.
Right.
Period. That's all we had to do.
So is that a change that Act 250 needs to make?
Now, Act 89, the legislature required evidence of compliance with the code, and so you have to have some way to show that it is going to be complying. And if you don't know what your building is looking like at that point, then we really can't give an accurate.
That seems like it's a chicken and egg sort of.
Hold on a second. We have a reality check, right? If you've got a PUD that you're going forward for, right, and it's X number of homes, and you've already built six other PUDs, you have a pretty good idea of what you're going to build, right? It's pretty obvious.
But you may not have done that.
You know what your current standard of building is. You're probably going to build on top of that as you've done before. So I think you have a pretty good idea of the construction technique you're going to use.
Yeah, but to provide the documentation that's required to prove that means that I actually have to have the architect or our architect actually build that house prior to, on paper, prior to submission for an Act 250 permit. And the presumption, I mean, that we don't do that. We have an outline.
Well, regardless of the outline, the techniques you're going to use for accomplishing some of these R values or the HRS values, you already know what you're going to do. So if you provide cross-sections of how you're going to...
But they won't accept that. Well, let me just clarify. So we do have some flexibility in that. We do recommend using a red check. If you have that ability to do that, that gives a lot of detail to the commission. It allows the commission to be able to review your project to make sure that it does meet the residential code. But there is some flexibility if there's other things that you can provide to show that it will meet code, then those can be put in, and that is directly in the application materials as a potential route to go. But you have to know more than just a very sketchy outline.
Not all developments are done by builders. There's a lot of Act 250 people going out for Act 250 permits that are just trying to develop lots and sell them off to builders sometime in the future.
It's the same issue with the commercial. You now have to design the building before you get a permit.
I mean, if the builder signs or the developer signs an affidavit that they will achieve HERS 54, I mean, I know that that's not allowed right now.
That would be much better.
You need to know.
That would be better. I mean, is that something that we could?
I mean, this is an issue, and I've had conversations with some of you already, and it's something that we are looking at.
Well, let's work on that. I mean, if that would solve your issue, so you know up front, you just say we're going to build the 54, and we'll, we sign off that we'll commit to do that. I mean, I know you don't go in after the fact and check, but presumably.
Well, what happens when Chris applies Act 250 now, and the code and stretch code fits 54? The reality is probably isn't going to build for 5 years after the next code update.
Well, you can commit to whatever the code is. I mean, it's the same situation. Otherwise, it seems like that's something that we could work on.
It could be an amendment to get, so you get your permit
permit, and then another technique would be to get your permit for your subdivision, and then when you're going in to actually build, that's when you get your permit amendment, which would show, that at that point you would know your plans exactly what you're building and get a permit amendment for that.
So we'd have to go through the process twice in that scenario, and I can tell you from a developer standpoint, you're not going to want us to come to you for every house or every building that we're going to propose to do. I think if we're going to just build a system full of administrative permit applications, I think it's better for us to do it on the front end, to do the full project.
If it's a substantive issue, it wouldn't be just an administrative amendment. In that case, it would be an amendment.
And I suggest that this is a real problem, but this isn't a code issue.
Right.
This is a process issue. We have less than an hour left.
Thank you.
Unfortunately, the code got embedded in activity, so.
But it doesn't matter what the code says, you still have that problem. Right? It's not a code question, it's an
But
Act
the
50
only
problem.
place the stretch code is administered, or happens now, is in Act 50. And quite frankly, I think you would have these problems even, the stretch code becomes very much a performance-based code, right?
Yes.
What happens, you're in, we all know that getting to 54, a lot of it's about air seals. So,
Here's some examples of
So you say, I'm going to do it, and your contractor hires whoever to do the air sealing at minimum wage or whatever, and they screw up, and you seal up your building, and you're at 52. What's that back to the compliance issue?
Well, we will get to, I don't know where it is, it's coming up next, but the blower door test issue. And ultimately, it would be great if blower doors were more available, builders could rent them from the lumber supply. I mean, so that you don't wait to the last minute to know whether you've met it or not. If it's incorporated into the process, it's used as a tool for increasing air leakage, reducing air leakage rates. I mean, maybe we'll get there. We've got hundreds of blower doors in Vermont right now, and maybe there's a market opportunity to build them in the process, knowing how important air leakage is in our building. So I think there's some solutions around that, and so we want to take a little time to talk about the requirements or not for blower door testing as part of the code.
I think it's too much of a stretch. Exactly because of what Chris said is another disincentive to doing projects that goes back to this. So I think I think it's too much of a stretch. And if the legislature has required that there be a stretch, it doesn't mean that it has to be that much of a stretch.
So you think 10% is too high a bar?
Yeah.
Okay. And these here are two examples of what it actually means. So here's our current code level, and the items that are in red are those that change. So we had two paths. Remember, you can achieve it through just efficiency, or you can trade off with renewables. The difference here being this package gets you there because there's a PV system on the roof that gives you that extra 5 points. But so we're better windows. This is the insulation grade. It's the same as we looked at the other one. Higher insulation in the ceiling. Another notch tighter on air leakage. Energy Star equipment. Putting in a heat recovery ventilator, not just bathroom fans, and doing a little better on the lighting. So that would give you HERS 54. Or on the other side, you could put PV on the roof and get there as well. Yeah.
Is some of this even a practical distribution? Because if you have R60 in your ceiling and R20 in your walls, there's nothing going on your ceiling, and it's all going on your walls. I mean, you get to a point where R50 in the ceiling and R20 in the walls isn't going to make much difference.
Yeah. I mean, clearly, putting foam, increasing the walls is the right move. So we're seeing more that happen more and more. But there's a lot of builders where that's a major hurdle. So yes, you're right, but you can trade these things off, and you get diminishing returns for all that insulation in the ceiling. But from an energy modeling perspective, the bottom line is the same. Yes.
So, given that I think out of the 6 models you show us, one of them at R20 plus the R5, what's the point of asking for that as part of the code standard if you already admitted that 90% of the buildings are never going to do it? What's the point? Why don't you just say to them, we're going to ask you to R54 roof, and we'll stop trying to fight with you about the wall. I guess I don't. Why would you do that and then show every model that doesn't have that choice?
Well, we can show some models that have it as well. So, I mean, the point here is there are multiple ways of achieving the HERS 54, whatever we end up picking as the target. The inch of foam around the envelope is going to provide a better building. We don't have all those thermal bridging at each stud. So it's a better way of building. In the future, we'll probably see, we're just nibbling at what the future building is going to be here, and so having some incentive, or at least starting to think about how to detail a home that includes foam sheathing is probably a sign of things to come in the future as well. So we
sold foam sheeting for 25 years on our house. 5 years ago, we stopped selling foam sheeting on our houses because every customer came in and told us, you're building a cheaper house because you have foam sheeting on your exterior of your home. I still get that comment today, and we stopped doing it because we got sick of people telling us foam doesn't work on the outside of the house. So the general public, the people who are buying these homes, really don't realize the benefit of that, and we just stopped doing it. We fought it for 25 years.
I think it'd be okay to have foam in addition to sheet.
So who wants to pay for two? You got product, and then you also have labor to install all of that.
Not anymore.
And we looked at buying the single product, but you can't meet that single product doesn't meet some of the other requirements that we have. So there's challenges.
There are challenges, and there
That single product conflicts with, which isn't really a problem here because nobody's enforcing building codes. That single product are more conflict with that product with building codes where they are enforced.
So you serving windows?
It's a pretty much the Marvin standard window, double glazed with low E and probably a gas in it. I mean, there are double glazed windows that are down to 0.28. Once you get down below that, you're probably moving to triple glaze. So this is sort of in the middle of the better double glazed window. So these, so these are some more examples. But for if 54 or 58 or whatever the standard ends up being, I'm not quite sure why it's doing that. Whatever the standard is for stretch code, where we end up with, the bottom line is that it will be, you'll need a HERS rating to achieve, because so we have some examples, and I think we'll provide some more examples based on some of what we heard today for the different elements that are there, but really it's a performance-based code, and hopefully we'll be able to work with Efficiency Vermont to have them provide that service as part of it. There's also a couple of, we've gotten conflicting numbers, somewhere around 100 log homes built each year, and so we've worked with the log home folks. Basically, the issue is how to make up for that lower performing log. And so this is the standard that we're talking about putting forward. There's not a lot of homes that are out there, but we want to make sure that we're not putting an industry out of business by having standards that are unachievable. Yeah.
You also take into consideration that a log home is like a mass wall, 4 feet in radius.
We've spent hours discussing that issue, and the question continues to be, show us the evidence. I mean, yes, anecdotally, people say that it does, and I'm sure it does, but the log home industry does not have the funds to do the research, and the national labs have not dedicated resources. So yes, that's probably the case, but we need to look at some defensible standards to take that into account. I don't know if you
I would add, yeah, we would need evidence, and I don't think it's the case.
so, I mean,
I don't think the math helps at all.
yeah. So, okay. So are we okay with moving on at this point? We've got a couple issues left.
I just echo that the R15 flag still multi-family homes in the stretch presents a problem. Yep. I mean, not that it's not a lot of the goal, but to me makes sense of the goal.
Okay.
I wonder about the data analysis.
Jeff?
Did I hear you say that there won't be a fast track? There won't be a fast track for the stretch code?
Yeah. So, let's see. I don't know about the res check. I doubt it because DOE is supporting the base code, and if states choose to do something else, then they would do that on their own or pick up the expense. I don't know, Kelly. We haven't. You might want to address that.
The DOE is always varying on the number of applications to get the state budget. If they have the budget, they would be able to support and red check the stretch, but they wouldn't be able to scale that until much later on.
We're one of the first states working with them on this, so I don't know if that makes a difference whether we get first in line or not. No.
Well, the way I told is obviously we'll be on base first, but we've set aside some of our own community funds so that if they say they can't do it, it's free, we'll push them for it. So we think that one should be an option.
A res check option?
As long as they list the line that they're willing to develop it for us.
Is that something that people think would be useful, having a res check option?
It would be good to know that, honestly.
Yeah, I mean, who would use res check instead of a HERS rating if it were available? Okay, you might too.
From a prescription, I mean, early on in the process.
Yeah.
For an active 50 permit, we have to buy something.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, how do we do a HERS rating when you don't have a building?
Well, and the res check is a tool that we use all the time.
Okay.
Trading stuff off.
Yeah.
Early in the process, instead of submitting it out to somebody to do a HERS rating where they do it somewhere, we don't see what they're doing. We can't include the values ourselves to make it work.
Okay. Well, that's good to know. I mean, yeah.
Why wouldn't you do the fast track? That's just not.
We could. I mean, this is going to be one of the issues as well. I mean, I guess we could do, because we would need to demonstrate the tighter air leakage levels, most likely. And
But that might be the case.
Might be. No, you're right. We could do a fast track. It sounds like that would probably be a useful action. Yes, it's modeled, and we just make, because the air leakage component is tighter than we know what's getting built average out there, and there wouldn't be any way to document that and give credit for it unless stretch code homes had to have a blower door test. I mean, that might be one of the compromises here. It sounds like that would be useful to have stretch code prescriptive packages, fast track packages. So the related to that is the issue of the required blower door testing. The national code has moved, actually in the 2012 version of IECC, moved to requiring duct blaster testing when ducts are outside the envelope, and that's usually not the case in Vermont. It's the rest of the country puts ducts in their attics. But and they also required blower door testing as part of the code. So the question on the table is this premature to ask the market, especially those builders that aren't currently participating in programs that are building in outside of the main populated areas, to seek out a blower door tester and provide that as part of the code, or do we have it as part of the stretch code and work with the market to develop the capacity and educate people that this is something that would be in place next time around. Craig?
I would just like to say, following up on Bob's comment earlier, over taxes that we look at Act 250 sort of thing, where I certainly redefine that lots are fairly thick. On this issue, we know the services that provide. We're going to keep this world. I don't even like the term stress code. I think we don't know where this came from. To me, it seems intuitive that the legislature thought Act 250 from a public planning perspective puts you in a different category. Right? So that was undoubtedly the thinking behind Act 250. That's going to stay policy of the state. We're going to have, in essence, two different codes, I think. Again, to Bob's point, getting people there. And I think these kind of services come into play.
It's not exactly regarding EP's ability to provide incentives for code or such. Policy.
So actually, you're saying actually,
No, there's no prohibition of EBC providing services to such the policy for the state and the department. There's no prohibition that EBC can't provide services to such.
your comment before was a big one.
Yes. Yes.
All right.
That's
easy
part of the
to
policy.
follow. Okay. Do we even know that there's enough lower door companies to be able to satisfy the need that's going to be driven by this?
Alan's here to
He just punched yours.
Full disclosure, I'm a board member of BPPA, Burlington Performance Professional Association, trade association for energy service providers, owner of Common Sense Energy. We provide these services to some higher end builders. We'll come in and do lower door tests, fire trim work, test on air leakage and such. And just yesterday, we're Blake Morey at a meeting. I polled members. It's like there's a lot of capacity out there. There's a lot of capacity. We're talking, you do a couple tests a day with these people, and there's some issues that exactly what you brought up is that is there capacity? Well, if we made this requirement, well, there's going to be way more than enough capacity because there's no compliance. Okay, if you came down even with compliance and a requirement, there still would be capacity to take care of it, guaranteed. No doubt, I told people around the state, it's geographic around the state that there is capacity. Brattleboro's a little late, but people could ramp up very easily. It's a $3,000 investment, and you don't have to have a certified auditor to do it. Several hours of training, and you could be able to operate. It's not brain surgery.
The reality is that there are many thousands of people who will just have so with 100 or so new homes that you're talking about, or 1,000 or so new homes you're talking about, this is a big math. It's got fast.
Yeah, I think I can actually put some numbers to that. We have, in our home performance program, we have about 70 organizations that are all certified under this criteria here, which, by the way, will be more than a couple hours training if somebody wants to ramp up.
Well, for that, yeah.
For that. But we already have, in the state of Vermont, at least 100 individuals and 100 blower doors who are independent contractors who do this work every day. If you subtract out the number of new housing units that are already getting a blower door test from Efficiency Vermont, you're probably less than something like 1,000 units a year that this would affect. So if you got 100 people and 100 blower doors and you're doing 1,000 a year, that's 10 tests a year for each of them. That's not counting the folks in the low-income weatherization program with certification of equipment. It's not counting all the folks at Efficiency Vermont with certification of equipment, or folks like Jeremy and Brian. So I think there's capacity there.
Yeah, so the capacity is not the issue. It's all the other things that come along with the requirement that
guess I would, I get concerned about the capacity when you're also encouraging local towns to adopt the stretch code, because then it's going to be every home built in that town. And the universe is going to get a lot larger, and you're going to be dealing, this is maybe the only way to get at the level playing field issue. Then you're going to be dealing with builders who are a lot less, don't know how to phase their job so that they're getting the blower door done at the right time. So that's the piece where I think there could be some problems.
Let me just real quick one then. In terms of clarification, the department and the groups that are working on developing this code before you, none of us are, to my knowledge, doing any advocacy with local towns. This is something the legislature passed, and so we're complying with local legislation requires us to do in terms of putting a code forward. I'm sure there are people who are advocating that.
One of your first slides actually had that as a point.
It was just on that. It was on 9. That's where it resides. It was just.
So we're not doing that. But Kelly.
I just wanted to, the department's thinking on this right now is not an incident for sure, but, you know, I am concerned about whether there is capacity, particularly in certain areas. And what we were thinking about is stretch code and going direct to 50 likely to be more populated areas where it's more likely that there would be capacity. I'm concerned about whether in those outlying areas, yes, that's not where all the homes are being built for the most part, but that there could be places that there is a capacity. And having the time to think about how do we reach the people, is it buying blower doors or, you know, home building places and people there, whatever. You know, just trying to think through how we can make sure we reach all the areas and we don't leave an area that is underserved. Just so you understand kind of what our thoughts were about it. But I'm happy to hear. I think I would want more than we think there's coverage. Like, I would want more to know more, like really see, like, these are the coverage towns, not just like we have general coverage around the state that we think there would be. Because the department's going to be the one that hear from people if there isn't availability. And I would want to make sure there was. And also, to give time if builders or others do want to take the time to give us training, that they have time to figure out before it's brought across for everything.
I will get to that info, because I can guarantee there's like there's multiples within 45 minutes of every square mile of the farm.
So from a consumer perspective, this is the litmus test for what the builder has done, whether they adhere to what they said they were going to do. Right? And I hope everybody in here agrees that this is an acceptable test. Is that true? You all believe the blower door test is the only way to test for this? So then this is the only way to ensure that what was done, you know, was built is the spec, right? So then the next question is, I'm just curious, I mean, what is the anticipated fail rate going to be when you have a new home and they do the test and it doesn't reach that limit that you're looking for? Is there ability to do remediation right during the construction phase wherever they do it, or so then will they be trying to fix and find leakages? Would they?
I can speak to that because I've done some work on homes and gotten 0.5 air changes per hour by doing a few minor things. And I'll just go real quickly. To achieve that level, which is far greater than the stretch code, a couple of simple things. Sheetrocker comes in, sheetrocks the ceiling, stocks, leaves. Air sealer comes in, does all the air sealing, do the blower door test, seal the windows. It's like, okay, insulate, sheetrock, do your final test, guaranteed. I will quote, if any house that followed that simple prescriptive measure did not blow that 3 air changes per hour out of the water.
So no builder should be afraid of this test.
No, it's just a few simple things to change the standard procedure. Instead of the insulator coming in once, doing the walls, leaving sheetrock, and then coming again from the attic, reverse it. The sheetrock comes twice instead of once.
And that certainly makes sense, and I understand that that's how we can achieve that rating. But I think what the point here of this blower door testing is, or the challenge is it happens prior to occupancy. So to get a true
closing the next day.
Yeah, because that's what happens. I mean, we're a production home builder. We do our inspections on Wednesday. They close on Friday.
And I can tell you one thing that you're asking about remediation. What you do is you don't do your blower door test after punch list is completed. You don't do it as a punch list item. You come in, you do it before all the trim work is on. So if the window sealant is leaking, you can remediate. If it's leaking around the any of the interfaces of the drywall, you can seal it.
But then I have to have the inspector come back
No,
and
consider that an
certify.
inspection.
No, but they have to certify that all of our appliances that are installed meet all the required things. So I have to. There's a timing.
I'm going to say something that Jeremy said something, which is it's absolutely achievable. I have no doubt at all with your systematic approach to building, you'll get it, you'll nail it every time. However, there are a lot of builders out there who are going to have somebody come in who are not accustomed to it, who have not done it in the right procedure, and they're going to fail. Right? And that's something that I think, that's the reality. So we need to figure out how to manage that, and code is challenging. So I don't necessarily have the answer, but you'll be able to do it. But a lot of other builders are not going to be able to do it. And Jeremy's here, and then
Yeah. Well, you're not talking about just one blower test for each home.
Well, what I'm
You are doing it as they are building the house. So you're going to start the construction schedule. You have to fit that into the home. I don't know about you, but I think they charge every time they do a blower test.
Yes.
You know, you're doing it for free. So you're adding costs. You do the testing. Two or three blower tests.
well,
For
typically
each new construction.
what we do now, and nobody really cares about the final number, but high-end builders come in prior to the drywall, prior to trim work being done. You can get your number right then and there. If you have a PPI or certified person do it, that's your final number. They submit the report, here you go. And then you have somebody else come in and do the inspection and check the mechanicals, the lighting, and things of that nature. So there's not, you don't have to come in again at the end if you passed it at one point during the building. This building is tight enough. You're not going to loosen it by putting trim work on windows and baseboards, doors.
I'm going to try and throw something out here. So just stepping back for a second. So the legislation, not Act 89, but the law that says departments can update the energy code every 3 years. The intent of that is to consistently make Vermont buildings more energy efficient over time. So that's what we're trying to do, is come up with a way that balances construction costs and challenges with meeting compliance and so forth with that increasing stringency. So we put some ideas forward, and we've got some really good information on what some of the challenges are. I'm really curious if we could hear from the group, what do you think we should do to make sure that we're increasing that stringency, that we're meeting the intent of that law, but that will work within all the constraints that you have to operate in? I'm going to go with Jeremy first.
With respect to all the new home builders, there's what, 1,000 or so homes and there are thousands and thousands of homes in the state of Vermont. Sort of retrofit going on. The new homes are already pretty efficient. The homes that are being retrofitted are really not. Codified to existing structures is really very confusing and not applied with any sort of motion at all. So I'm sympathetic to your concerns, but I think you're missing a big part of the picture.
And Jeff here.
Well, Efficiency Vermont does a pre-drywall, post-installation, pre-drywall inspection. We look at everything that's on the visual inspection options for the code. And those things are covered. We do the blower test at the end, all the passes. Really, the key to it is getting that visual inspection done and the items called for. From a code standpoint, if there were a way to verify that, then we wouldn't be stuck with the pass-fail really at the end.
The checklist approach.
Yeah. The issue now is, though, is that anyone can certify that they did that, whether they did it or not. There's no requirement as there is here for others regular or DPI contract. The code also states that the testing option has to be done after the development of all the penetration system. That often pushes it
late in the process.
Yeah. But really what we found is that if people get the double bypasses taken care of before the drywall goes up, and the drywall goes up, then home is out.
Like one thing, I just ran into a former employee who works for a GC now, and he's appalled by how they do the air sealing. Okay, I've seen a lot of really good builders out there, going and, oh, I can air seal it. Well, it may be foamed, but it's not sealed. The only way you're going to know that is either A, years of experience and years of background with the floor door, or do a floor door test and check it. Oh, you got to touch this up. Oh, you got to touch it. You go through, you do your QC work. As far as cost, the package deal, $500 to have somebody come in, yeah, foam the windows, the doors, seal everything up for me, and give me a number at the end. You just want a floor door test because you're seasoned, you've been through it, the guys are trained, they can do all the air sealing. It's just an interim test, $200.
That comment here online is basically first few model tests that we started to have done previously, would be a learning experience. And after that, you know the areas you need to address that. And after that, you're probably just looking at one.
Yeah, I don't see any reason why we need to do more than one test in the vast majority of cases.
Just to go back to your question and the comment that that you've been, or the department's been directed to up each 3 years to go for a more stringent energy code. And is there a payback analysis that is part of that? Because the low-hanging fruit is rehab. And at some point, we all may feel good that our new construction homes are so efficient, but we've left in the dust our very old housing stock in Vermont. And at some point, do we stop focusing on these new construction homes and look at the rehab component? The other thing I would say that I can't get out of a room without talking about ventilation. And we have not figured out ventilation. As the homes get tighter, we have not figured out that ventilation. I strongly oppose the requirement for an HRV for every unit in multifamily housing. It becomes problematic, and we haven't found systems that work. They use a lot of electricity. Their filters need to be changed 4 times a year. If you don't change the filters, then you're just using a lot of electricity for something that's not working. So ventilation is something it needs more research. Requiring an HRV, I think, is problematic for payback reasons, for actually accomplishing the goals you're trying to accomplish. And I really urge the Efficiency Vermont and the department to put some money into researching ventilation, because we're just not there.
So HRV is an option in there. It's not a requirement.
I don't think so.
No. And I would, for kind of back, I think the question you asked was kind of, how do we keep raising the bar? I would like to see in the prescriptive packages a path that allows higher cavity insulation, and without having to do a continuous insulation. I think there are a lot of builders that just don't agree with hanging windows and trim on a non-durable building product on the outside of the house.
You're talking about 2x8?
Something, whatever if that works. I don't know when you plug in the model, go backwards to find out what the big 2015 ITC is. I don't know what to get there. I don't know if it's 2x8 with cavity insulated wall, cellulose would work. Airtight is very good. That's the biggest thing for the building. But that package increasingly tighter. Right, but that gets you out of being able to use a prescriptive path.
Well, or you could combine it with, for those packages, you can combine it with an air leakage test. But for baseline, you wouldn't have to do that. It might be a hybrid.
The reality is that I think that the majority of the houses that actually get certified, the reality is that most of those houses that are being certified are
You know, and so I think, and they are looking at that prescriptive chart. And so I think that there have to be prescriptive options have to be there without any performance.
We can, you know, there are an infinite number of possibilities on the prescriptive package. If you think that higher cavity insulation R value is one of those approaches builders would put in there. I mean, we try to limit it to it's been 4 in the past. You can add more packages if you think that would be helpful.
Right. So I would just like to see another package that doesn't have continuous insulation.
Right. So if you had a package that was just standard 2x6, but you got compensated by having 0.25 air change per hour at 50 or something like that, or 0.2.
It's not a package.
No, I'm saying create a package, a prescriptive path for that. That would
and require a blower door.
and require blower door.
That's not prescriptive.
That's not prescriptive.
No,
You know, some of them require some.
I want a path so I can look at a chart
Yeah.
and get to
Okay.
and be able to demonstrate compliance without having somebody come test it.
Yeah. Got it. Yeah.
You could do that with residential,
Correct.
with your choice of walls.
Like with your own system.
Well, that.
With ResCheck. No, lower door system.
Yeah. And that's.
Somebody on your crew to be certified with your own blower door. I mean, in my business that doesn't work. I'm a component builder, so I'm not involved with the entirety of everything.
But that is a concept. I mean, why couldn't builders, with some training, have rent blower doors or have them on site? I mean, ultimately, I think that's where you need to be. Is that part of the building packs process? And if you could check air leakage before the day before the closing, that would help everybody. So.
But I think one thing that in the industry was find that it's going to be, look at the home builders, what percentage of air sealing is in their job description? A fraction of 1%. Why not get somebody else who's working at the same hourly wage or less, okay? I pay my guys $15 an hour, so most good carpenters are getting more than that. They can foam twice as good and twice as fast as what the carpenters on the job site are going to do. So you're going to find, it's like, try it out. There's an economic advantage to get some of these PPI contractors to come in. They know what they're doing. That's what they do. Do their tests in and out, guaranteed you're going to pass, and you're going to save money. It's going to be done cheaper than what you can do with your own in-house forces. So,
I think it's the best way to improve efficiency with new construction today is just to require code compliance that's already in existence. And if we just say we're going to come up with some approach, we don't have to have all these discussions. We're going to see a huge improvement in energy efficiency just by saying leave what we have today and make everybody meet it, period. So we're changing the bar on people who are doing it right.
But it's required now.
How do they're not doing it? How do
You're saying it's required compliance.
Yeah.
It's required now.
But all we're saying is it's got to be enforced.
enforce?
And there's an easy form. The lawyers require a certificate or a blower door test for every house, and it's done.
Right.
That's all we have to do.
I think with the time left, we should just touch on the last couple of changes. I don't think we're going to have much discussion about them. And then we'll wrap up.
Yeah. I mean, I'm still hearing what Jeremy said too, and we think we have a hard time with compliance in new construction. The existing homes are huge relative to that. So.
Yeah. And they're not only huge in terms of the energy impact on an individual basis. We also retrofit more houses in Vermont every year than we build.
Yeah. And you're dealing with challenges on existing housing stock that you may get extraordinary percent. So we figure out some way to raise the bar existing housing, but I think applying new housing standards codes probably is
How does the stretch code for rehab, is it not?
No, but there is a chapter, that previously existing home requirements were spread throughout the code, and now they're all in one chapter. But basically, what it's saying, and feel free to comment on this, is that anytime you touch a component of the home, it needs to be brought up to the new construction standards.
But actually, that's not quite true, because there are a lot of conditions that I believe that it's described.
That's right.
Where if you open up a wall that the cavity is already filled with insulation, then you don't need to do anything to that wall.
Or if you're re-roofing, you don't have to do
So I think those are some of the clarifications in the 2016 that were lacking in the past. That aren't necessarily going to increase the efficiency in rehab, but they hopefully will at least clarify the requirements.
So if I have a rehab project that triggers Act 250, does that mean my code is distressed?
Oh, I don't know.
You have to have an answer to this.
What, I'm looking at Kelly. Do we know that?
If there's a stretch code adopted, then it would have to be, then it would go through, an Act 250 project would go through the stretch. I mean, in terms of rehab, I think that would, the section that is being rehabbed would have to go through the stretch.
Yeah, I can tell you a lot of rehabs would not be able to.
So you have to create a rehab stretch code, and it doesn't matter whether it stretches or not. It just has to be labeled the stretch codes for Act 250.
It can't be equivalent to this.
No, it can't.
But you can't do a HERS on a, if you're doing part of the building, that would work. But we could have, getting back to the suggestion that we have prescriptive packages, fast track packages for stretch, you could in theory apply those R values to the section of the building that's being rehabbed. Something like that. That might, I don't know if that's the answer, but that might be.
So it may not seem that important just because it's kind of the world of this, but when you put it in Act 250, it's really important.
Yeah, got it.
Do you need an Act 250 permit for that sort of rehab typically?
Sometimes.
Yeah, downtown building, we got a great one. Downtown building, we're converting it to 18 units of affordable housing. We trigger Act 250 all the time.
So let's go through, as Jim suggested, maybe we just go through the last ones that we had teed up as worthy of discussion and see if we can get through them relatively quickly. So the lighting requirement is the 75%, and 75% of the fixtures or the bulbs need to be efficient. There was an exception in there that we're suggesting be stricken because we think that there's LED product available. So low voltage lighting would be track halogen lighting or outdoor lighting, and it seems like that those products are pretty readily available these days, and the price is coming way down on LED. So that was one change from the national code there. Existing buildings, we've had this conversation as well. I think I'm not sure what we're going to talk about anymore besides pointing out the fact that there is this Chapter 5 now around. So there's additions and alterations, and so we talked about the fact that the existing building structure doesn't need to be touched, but where construction is happening, it would need to be brought up to the standards.
And what I would suggest or ask is anybody who's concerned with existing homes, the application of existing buildings, you look at those, the provisions describing existing conditions. It's a very, very short section, and so to look at that and, if that doesn't make it less money, let us know what might be improved, what might be an improvement.
So we've also spent quite a bit of time with Jeff and Efficiency Vermont trying to improve the air barrier section. There's a whole table around air leakage components, and there's many more products that are available out there these days that sort of come out of a lot of the European building techniques and elsewhere. We want to make sure that we're not prohibiting materials that work in buildings. So there are new materials that let moisture through during the summer, but they close up in the winter. We had prohibited rigid. We had required rigid air barriers before. There's some durable, non-rigid options that are out there. So you can get way in the weeds on this, but we have some language in there now. I think it's going to be changed based on recent conversations we've had. I don't know if you want to add anything to that, Jeff, but I think. So the other, did you have a question?
No, heated slab.
Oh, so okay, so let me just walk through that. So the second provision we're talking about, we have suggested changing the language in the code to prohibit, because Vermont has had a policy for years about electric resistance heat, and we've got cold climate heat pumps these days that will work down to 20 below without needing electric resistance in them. So we're suggesting that those products that will work in our climate be the ones that get installed rather than the ones with electric resistance backup. That's what we're suggesting.
Let me ask a question. The backup heat. So
This isn't about the back. This is about the heat pump itself.
Okay.
But so there may, in some situations, homes. The provision in the code now only requires no electric resistance heat in Burlington. Burlington put that in. It allows electric resistance elsewhere in the state, the way the code is written right now. But this is just about heat pumps that have built-in electric resistance heat. So you could, in theory, put the heat pump in and put a strip of heat in the bathroom, that sort of thing. Okay. And the last one, too, so this was something that we suggested in looking for reaction to it, that the energy used for snow melt and driveways and sidewalks be provided by on-site renewable energy. Is that pushing things?
Are we on the stretch code now, or
No, this is the base code. I'm sorry. Yeah.
What if your project is not located in a site that's very energy renewable friendly, like a site that's shaded or not oriented correctly? Or using wood? Or using wood?
There needs to be an exemption. It seemed like if we're moving in the renewable direction, using fossil fuels to melt snow seems something that we might want to discourage, but maybe we're going too far here.
You could go with a cold climate heat pump boiler, and then the electricity is pretty much, or allow a cold climate heat pump boiler.
Well,
where do you stop here?
Yeah.
You could also salt down, right? Put more salt down, so you're going to start polluting the waterways more. Where you go here?
are they going to stop there?
I don't know. It was no, but it's.
Because I'll tell you, we're looking at one right now, but it's only because of a design issue where we have a very steep approach into a garage. We would never put one of these systems in, but it's just because of the site circumstances that we have to consider it. So,
The question is how many PV panels do you need to support such a system? Do you have the roof space to open?
I would say allow a cold climate heat pump boiler, and it's done.
The electric
Because
supply
they're electric. We have very
renewable.
right. So either on-site removal or heat pump boilers.
Community renewables work as well. I mean, it's probably, this is so much in the weeds, probably. It's not going to happen very often. I just wanted to raise it, and it sounds like there's certainly some consideration for exemptions.
It seems like there are very few options for meeting this.
Yeah.
You would have to have rooftop PV combined with an electric boiler, right? Isn't that the only way you can meet this?
I think this is the intention.
Or you could wood. Well, or you could offset you could offset the energy used through another source. I mean, so it wouldn't be directly provided by that renewable option.
You could also strike on site, and then anyone in Burlington could do it. Required plan.
That's true. Okay, so this one probably, I mean, it's not going to happen very often. It probably raises too many questions. So another thing that is in the proposed provision for stretch code, the stretch code chapter basically says meet HERS 54 and provide a charging outlet, which is a 120-volt socket for future electric vehicles. So those are the two. The suggestion here is we want to start talking about providing ability to, if a homeowner moves in and has an electric vehicle, at least have some provision for recharging.
a lot of multi-family development is what do you do?
Well, so the number, so you need to have one. Yeah. We were silent about who pays for it or how you set that up. No, we're not. You can figure that out.
I can't emphasize this enough. These numbers, they're not big enough. They're not big enough.
So we're hearing too burdensome, and others are saying we need more.
Infrastructure to provide.
That's right. It's an outlet.
You want 220 at these spots, right?
Right.
And it's coming, right? And you can, in 10 years, I don't know what the percentage is going to be, but it's a lot higher than it is now. These people are renting and buying, and there's going to be a huge demand. And there's no infrastructure in existing garages today. None. Zero. Right? So if you don't put it in, I think you should have 110 in every parking spot in multifamily units. To start with. Because it'll be there in the future as people switch over.
I mean, we talked about should we put conduit in so you can feed it later or something.
Yeah, and you can't ask the owners of rental housing to provide free electricity.
No, we're not saying that.
Well, what am I going to put the outlet there and put a cap over it?
You put a meter on it or something.
Now we're going to have a different meter.
I know you get it, so, I mean, I have not looked at this. It's an issue that's being wrestled with all over the country. People drive to the parking grocery store and just plug it in and pay for that. So I think it's certainly doable research to see if there are solutions that are being proposed in other places that would be out.
And if you have it now, tell them to provide an extension until you do.
Yeah, then you get in the service.
So if I understand this requirement, my parking lot already has one parking space out of every 25, that's a big sign in front of it that says handicap. So now you'd like me to put another parking space in that says electrical charging station, so the only person who can use it, in essence, is the car that needs to be plugged in. So now I've lost 2 out of every 25 parking spaces in the parking lot that can't be used by the regular folks.
This doesn't require any designation for the 5. It's really a property.
What is the point of having a 5 that has a charging
So there's
station? Somebody else can park there, and the guy who has the car will be charged. Can't use it.
So there's the ability, and I think that's kind of a renter, building owner's prerogative of, I really want to have someone to launch, if they have a charging vehicle that you need to charge, you can designate the spot. It's leaving it up to you. We can put in that you have to designate an electric vehicle charging spot, but we really would like to have the opportunity there going forward with the idea that there will be more and more electric vehicles.
Maybe a selling feature for building owners at some point in the future too, that they've got this capacity. So it's getting the market to start thinking about it. And
The problem, I guess the real issue for me is what was in the identified in the paperwork that I saw somewhere, that at 120 volts, it's going to take 10 hours to recharge the car. So you're going to be there at my place for half an hour, you're going to be thrilled and get another mile to drive home. Instead of wonder whether when you get where you're going, you can't get home because you get that half an hour and you plug into my outlet.
Well, we're talking multifamily development. I think the presumption is that people who live there. But again, point taken.
We did a project. We put 2 220 outlets on the side of the building, and it actually services 6 spaces because the cords are long enough. So, it's not as onerous as it seems for the parking. It's any one of those 6 spaces somebody can pull up to and reach the outlet.
okay, so look at that. It's 12 noon.
So we covered a lot of material and got, I think, some really important feedback from people. So first I want to say thank you very much for giving us your time. We're taking your time very seriously. I also want to urge you to go ahead and submit the comments online because getting them in the written record is important and helpful for us as well. And for people who are staying, there's also going to be lunch.
Yeah, there's sandwiches and lunch here. People would like.
If you fill out the paper form while you're here, we will log those online.
So thank you for your time this morning. We really appreciate you taking it and providing